Fred Trump Sr., patriarch of the Trump family and founder of their real estate empire, was not only a prolific builder but also an architect of a complex financial legacy that would define the family's fortune. Behind the polished image of a self-made dynasty lay a system of covert wealth transfers and aggressive tax avoidance schemes that began long before Donald Trump entered the public spotlight. These efforts ensured the accumulation and preservation of family wealth across generations, while avoiding hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. According to an extensive investigative report by the New York Times, published in October of the year 2018, Fred Trump and his wife Mary legally transferred over $1 billion in wealth to their children, most notably Donald Trump. However, the methods they employed to do so were anything but conventional. The report describes a network of shell companies, inflated service charges, and manipulated property valuations, which together constituted what tax experts later deemed a highly orchestrated scheme to minimize estate and gift taxes. One key mechanism used in the early 1990s was a company called All County Building Supply and Maintenance. This entity, technically owned by Fred Trump's children, was created to purchase supplies for Trump-owned apartment buildings. However, instead of functioning as a true intermediary, All County was used to inflate the cost of these goods and services. In reality, Fred Trump would purchase equipment at a regular market rate, and then All County would build his own buildings at much higher prices. The result was a disguised method of funneling millions of dollars to his heirs, all while creating tax-deductible business expenses for his real estate holdings. The manipulation did not stop there. In several instances, Fred Trump transferred ownership of properties to his children at dramatically undervalued rates. For example, an apartment complex worth tens of millions of dollars was appraised at just over a few million when ownership was transferred to Donald and his siblings. This undervaluation reduced the taxable value of the transaction, allowing the family to evade a significant portion of the taxes that would otherwise have been owed under United States tax law. A particularly brazen example of estate planning occurred in the twilight years of Fred Trump's life. As his health declined in the late 1990s, his children, Donald included, allegedly took steps to rewrite his will in their favor, even as they were accused by other family members, such as Mary Trump, of manipulating a vulnerable man for financial gain. In her book Too Much and Never Enough, Mary Trump, who holds a Ph.D. in clinical psychology and is the daughter of Donald Trump's late brother Fred Jr., recounts in detail how legal pressure was used to cut her branch of the family out of their rightful inheritance. The scale of this systematic tax evasion was staggering. The New York Times reported that Fred Trump's financial maneuvers likely allowed the family to avoid over $500 million in gift and estate taxes. While the statute of limitations for many of these activities had expired by the time the report was published, the revelations ignited public outrage and renewed scrutiny over the Trump family's narrative of self-made success. As detailed in the original New York Times investigation, published on October 2, 2018, and further supported by testimony from Mary Trump in her memoir published in the year 2020, this legacy of concealed transfers and undervalued assets set the foundation for the Trump family's wealth and for the legal, ethical, and financial questions that continue to surround it. Despite branding himself as a world-class businessman, Donald Trump's financial record tells a story marked by repeated failures, bankruptcies, and a deeply entangled relationship with one of the world's most controversial financial institutions, Deutsche Bank. Over the decades, Trump relied heavily on loans and credit to finance his business ventures, many of which collapsed under the weight of debt. In the wake of numerous bankruptcies and defaults, few mainstream lenders were willing to extend him credit. Yet Deutsche Bank emerged as the lone exception, extending billions of dollars in loans despite Trump's growing reputation as a risky client. By the early 1990s, Donald Trump had declared corporate bankruptcy multiple times. His high-profile failures included the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, which filed for bankruptcy in the year 1991, and Trump Plaza Hotel, which followed suit in the year 1992. In total, 6 corporate bankruptcies were filed between the early 1990s and the late 2000s. These repeated defaults resulted in the erosion of Trump's creditworthiness with major U.S. financial institutions. However, Deutsche Bank's private wealth division saw opportunity where others saw red flags. Beginning in the late 1990s, the German lender began issuing sizable loans to Trump, including a reported $300 million between the years 2005 and 2015. These loans were often extended based not on Trump's assets or income, but on the perceived value of his brand and the speculative appreciation of real estate assets he pledged as collateral. The relationship between Trump and Deutsche Bank was not without turbulence. According to internal investigations and reporting by the New York Times, The Guardian, and WNYC Studios' Trump Incorporated podcast, Trump defaulted on a construction loan from Deutsche Bank for the Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago during the 2008 financial crisis. In response to a lawsuit from the bank, Trump countersued, accusing Deutsche Bank of helping cause the financial meltdown and claiming damages exceeding $3 billion. Despite the acrimony, the bank's private wealth management division, separate from the commercial lending unit, eventually resumed lending to Trump, reportedly after he began offering personal guarantees. Perhaps most notably, Trump's relationship with Deutsche Bank was not merely transactional. As reported in Trump Incorporated by WNYC Studios and ProPublica, Trump provided lavish perks to bank officials who approved and managed his loans. These included access to prestigious events such as boxing matches and the U.S. Open tennis tournament. Bank employees were offered tickets and hospitality packages, entertainment that raised internal concerns about conflicts of interest and ethical conduct within the bank. The nature of these benefits came to light through whistleblower accounts and internal bank documentation uncovered during investigations. In later years, Deutsche Bank itself became the subject of multiple federal investigations, including probes into Russian money laundering and its broader role in enabling questionable transactions. Congressional inquiries saw detailed records of the bank's dealings with Donald Trump, including suspicious activity reports, SARs, allegedly filed by bank staff related to transactions involving Trump's accounts. These investigations, while not resulting in criminal charges against Trump as of August 2025, further underscored the exceptional risk Deutsche Bank assumed in maintaining a relationship with him. Ultimately, the Trump-Deutsche Bank story reflects a recurring pattern in the Trump financial narrative: a willingness to defy norms, an appetite for litigation, and a brand built as much on defiance and spectacle as on actual business performance. The connection illustrates not only how Trump managed to sustain his business empire in the face of ruin, but also how fragile the ethical boundaries can become when high finance intersects with fame and political power. Donald Trump's rise as a cultural icon and self-proclaimed billionaire businessman was fueled in large part not by verified financial achievement, but by his strategic manipulation of media narratives and persistent inflation of his personal net worth. While the public saw Trump as a golden symbol of capitalist success, thanks to skyscrapers bearing his name, luxury properties, and television appearances, investigative reports and sworn testimonies have revealed that his actual financial position often bore little resemblance to the image he projected. A central theme in Trump's business history is his consistent overstatement of the value of his assets. These exaggerations were not incidental, they were deliberate efforts to inflate his perceived wealth for personal, political, and financial gain. According to multiple legal filings and investigative journalism sources, Trump submitted wildly inconsistent financial statements to banks, insurers, and tax authorities, each tailored to suit his immediate needs. For example, in financial documents submitted to lenders, Trump routinely claimed that his real estate holdings were worth far more than market assessments or independent appraisals suggested. Properties such as Trump Tower, the Trump National Golf Club, and the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. were each subject to inflated valuations. In many cases, Trump claimed values based on brand premiums, assigning speculative worth to the mere presence of the Trump name, even in situations where revenue and occupancy rates did not support such estimates. One of the most prominent sources of information on this pattern was the civil fraud trial brought by the Attorney General of the state of New York, Letitia James. In her complaint, filed in September of the year 2022, the Attorney General alleged that Trump, the Trump Organization, and several of his adult children had engaged in persistent and repeated business fraud. The complaint cited dozens of examples where Trump's statements of financial condition misrepresented the value of assets by hundreds of millions of dollars. These misstatements were often used to secure more favorable loan terms, insurance policies, and tax benefits. The court agreed. In February of the year 2024, New York State Judge Arthur Engoron ruled that Trump was liable for fraud and ordered him to pay $355 million in penalties. Additionally, the court imposed a 3-year ban preventing Trump from serving in a leadership role within any business in the state of New York. The judge described the business practices as blatant and systematic fraud and noted that the Trump Organization repeatedly falsified records to inflate Donald Trump's net worth. Even beyond the courtroom, Trump's approach to valuation was deeply tied to his media strategy. As early as the year 1988, in an interview with Spy magazine, Trump was quoted acknowledging that he calculated his net worth in part based on his own feelings. In his words, "My net worth fluctuates, and it goes up and down with markets and with attitudes and with feelings, even my own feelings." This admission, part boast, part branding, underscored how Trump's public image was less a reflection of financial reality and more a product of storytelling and media manipulation. Television played a crucial role in shaping this narrative. The reality series The Apprentice, which premiered in the year 2004, portrayed Trump as a decisive and commanding business mogul. The show popularized his catchphrase "You're fired," and presented him as a titan of industry whose approval was synonymous with business success. In reality, the show's image was largely a fiction, constructed in part by NBC producers and Trump himself to elevate his public persona at a time when his real estate business was facing financial strain. By building a mythology around exaggerated success, Trump positioned himself as an authority on wealth and leadership, opening doors not only in business but also in politics. His narrative of success became a political asset, bolstering his presidential campaign in the year 2016 with the argument that he would run America like a business. In truth, the business model he brought with him was one that thrived on opacity, overstatement, and the blurring of perception with reality. The image of Donald Trump as a successful and untouchable mogul began to erode under the weight of mounting legal troubles. In the years following his presidency, Trump faced a series of legal battles that not only imposed staggering financial penalties but also exposed systemic misconduct within the Trump Organization. From civil fraud cases to personal liability and defamation and sexual abuse lawsuits, these judgments marked a turning point in public and legal scrutiny of Trump's conduct, both as a businessman and as an individual. One of the most publicly significant legal defeats came in the case brought by writer E. Jean Carroll. In the year 2019, Carroll accused Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her in a department store dressing room in the mid-1990s. Trump denied the allegation, publicly mocking Carroll and questioning her credibility. In response, Carroll filed a defamation lawsuit, which later expanded to include a civil battery claim under the Adult Survivors Act passed in the state of New York. In May of the year 2023, a federal jury in the Southern District of New York found Donald Trump liable for sexual abuse and defamation. The jury awarded Carroll $5 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Trump's continued attacks on Carroll, even after the verdict, led to a second defamation trial in January of the year 2024. In that proceeding, the jury awarded Carroll an additional $83.3 million in damages. The presiding judge, Lewis Kaplan, noted Trump's statements were deliberate and malicious, and intended to humiliate and destroy Carroll's reputation. Simultaneously, Trump was entangled in a civil fraud case brought by the Attorney General of the state of New York, Letitia James. The lawsuit, filed in September of the year 2022, alleged that Trump, his adult sons Donald Jr. and Eric Trump, and executives at the Trump Organization had engaged in a decade-long scheme to inflate the value of assets on financial statements submitted to banks and insurers. These false representations enabled the Trump Organization to secure favorable loan terms, insurance rates, and other financial advantages. After months of testimony, including from Donald Trump himself, the New York Supreme Court rendered its verdict in February of the year 2024. Judge Arthur Engoron ruled that Trump had committed persistent and repeated fraud. The court ordered Trump to pay $355 million in penalties. With interest included, the final amount exceeded $450 million. In addition to the financial judgment, Trump was barred from operating a business in the state of New York for a period of 3 years. The ruling also imposed restrictions on the Trump Organization's ability to conduct real estate transactions in New York during that time. These were not isolated incidents. Over the years, the Trump Organization had been involved in a litany of legal disputes. In the year 2017, the company agreed to pay $25 million to settle lawsuits filed by former students of Trump University, who alleged that the real estate courses were fraudulent. In the year 2019, the Donald J. Trump Foundation was dissolved by order of a New York judge after findings that the charity had been used for political and personal purposes, including purchasing a portrait of Trump and settling legal obligations for his businesses. These legal judgments, taken together, form a pattern of behavior that goes beyond occasional missteps. They reveal a business empire built on deception, a personal brand weaponized to deflect accountability, and a legal strategy centered on delay, denial, and deflection. Though Donald Trump has publicly denied all wrongdoing and cast the cases as politically motivated attacks, the rulings, delivered by juries and judges in multiple courts, stand as concrete legal rebukes to that narrative. Among the most sensational and consequential scandals involving Donald Trump is the affair with adult film actress Stormy Daniels and the subsequent hush money payment that led to the first-ever criminal conviction of a former president of the United States. This scandal not only exposed ethical and legal violations but also revealed the intricate nexus of personal misconduct, media manipulation, and criminal deception behind Trump's public image. Stephanie Clifford, known professionally as Stormy Daniels, alleged that she had a sexual encounter with Donald Trump in the year 2006, shortly after the birth of his youngest son, Barron. Daniels claimed that Trump initiated the affair during a celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. Trump has consistently denied the allegation. However, as the 2016 presidential election approached, Daniels negotiated a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for a payment of $130,000, arranged by Trump's personal attorney at the time, Michael Cohen. The payment was made in October of the year 2016, mere weeks before the election, and was intended to prevent Daniels from publicly disclosing the alleged affair. Although non-disclosure agreements are not inherently illegal, the manner in which the payment was recorded became the centerpiece of a criminal case. The Trump Organization reimbursed Michael Cohen for the payment, but the funds were falsely classified as legal expenses in internal business records. This misrepresentation formed the basis of a 34-count felony indictment brought by the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, in April of the year 2023. The charges alleged that Donald Trump had falsified business records in the first degree under New York state law, with the intent to conceal another crime, namely, the violation of campaign finance laws. Prosecutors argued that the hush money payment constituted an unreported contribution intended to influence the outcome of a federal election. During the trial, evidence included emails, invoices, and testimony from Michael Cohen, who stated under oath that Donald Trump had personally approved the plan to repay him through artificially inflated monthly retainers. Additional testimony came from Hope Hicks, Trump's former communications director, and Stormy Daniels herself, who recounted her interactions with Trump and the pressure she felt to remain silent. On May 30, in the year 2024, a Manhattan jury found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. This marked the first criminal conviction of a former United States president. The court found that Trump's actions constituted a willful and systematic attempt to deceive the public, falsify corporate documents, and interfere in a democratic election process. Sentencing was scheduled for July of the same year, pending appeals. The media dimension of the scandal also bears emphasis. According to reporting by the Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, and the New York Times, executives at American Media Incorporated, parent company of the National Enquirer, played a significant role in suppressing stories about Trump's alleged affairs. This practice, known as catch and kill, involved purchasing exclusive rights to damaging stories with no intent to publish them. The Stormy Daniels payment was one of several such arrangements pursued by Trump allies during the 2016 campaign. The scandal became a watershed moment in American political history, drawing unprecedented legal consequences for a president, past or present. It also illuminated the degree to which Trump's political ambitions were supported by layers of concealment and manipulation, extending from corporate bookkeeping to tabloid journalism. More than a personal embarrassment, the Daniels case demonstrated how violations of public trust can be orchestrated through carefully constructed corporate and legal veils. The Trump family's approach to power was not only rooted in the patriarch's empire but was perpetuated and magnified through the prominent roles played by his children and close relatives. While the political world often draws criticism for nepotism, the Trump administration elevated it to an unprecedented level, installing immediate family members in senior government positions while enabling them to reap extraordinary financial rewards. At the same time, deep familial divisions, lawsuits, and public betrayals underscored the volatile internal dynamics behind the family's polished public image. Among the most prominent beneficiaries of Trump's presidency were his daughter Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner. Both were appointed to key advisory roles within the White House, despite lacking relevant policy experience and receiving no formal salary. Nonetheless, a report by the watchdog organization Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, published in the year 2021, revealed that the couple earned between $172 million and $640 million during Donald Trump's 4-year term. These earnings were derived not from federal paychecks but from external income sources, including real estate holdings, equity stakes in businesses, and highly lucrative licensing and branding deals, many of which continued during their tenure as public officials. For example, Jared Kushner's stake in Cadre, a real estate tech firm, and Ivanka Trump's global licensing arrangements contributed significantly to their earnings. Critics have argued that their continued business ties raised serious concerns about conflicts of interest, access to privileged information, and influence peddling at the highest levels of government. The couple also benefited from foreign connections, including ties to Gulf states. After leaving office, Kushner's investment firm Affinity Partners secured a $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, overseen by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This deal, completed less than 6 months after Kushner's White House departure, raised red flags among ethics experts and lawmakers, with some accusing Kushner of monetizing his prior diplomatic role in the Middle East. While some family members prospered politically and financially, others found themselves shut out of the inner circle. The most vocal critic from within the Trump family has been Mary L. Trump, the daughter of Donald Trump's late brother Fred Trump Jr. A licensed clinical psychologist, Mary Trump emerged into the public eye with her best-selling memoir, Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man, published in the year 2020. In her book, Mary Trump portrayed the Trump family as driven by manipulation, greed, and emotional neglect. She alleged that Donald Trump and his siblings deliberately misled her and her brother about the value of their grandfather's estate, effectively cutting them out of their rightful inheritance. In 2020, Mary Trump filed a lawsuit accusing Donald Trump, Marianne Trump Berry, and Robert Trump of fraud and civil conspiracy. The suit claimed that the trio conspired to squeeze her out of the family fortune by presenting false financial documents and pressuring her into signing a lowball settlement agreement. The Trump family responded by attempting to block the publication of Mary's memoir and moved to dismiss the lawsuit. However, the legal dispute continued to draw headlines and laid bare the deep fractures within the Trump dynasty. The litigation, combined with Mary Trump's public interviews and psychological assessments of her uncle's behavior, presented a stark contrast to the image of loyalty and unity often projected by the family. Together, these episodes reveal a two-sided reality, one of extreme familial privilege and wealth building within government, and another of betrayal, resentment, and litigation behind closed doors. The Trump name became a symbol not only of political disruption but also of a uniquely American family saga, one that blurred the lines between dynasty, democracy, and dysfunction.